Okay, I'm gonna start the
Awesome.
recording. Another
Okay,
great
great.
thing to have people share in the chat if they're willing to, or if they know, is just which course location you're interested in. And it could be multiple, but if you have a specific one you're interested in, that would be really helpful for us.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, welcome again, everyone. And it's so lovely to see you here in this virtual Zoom meeting room. Hopefully, your interest in Climate Farm School means we may also see you in person on a farm later on in the year. And yeah, this is just our first open house of 2025 to share more information about the program and some of its evolutions in our programming and course offerings and answer all of your questions. So we'll start off with just a short presentation about what Climate Farm School is, how it's evolved, and what our host farm locations and course offerings are going to be for as far as we know for the rest of the year. And yeah, leave plenty of time at the end for your questions. So yeah, if you have those, you can just keep putting them in the chat or hold them till the end. We'll have plenty of time um, to get to all of those. So we'll talk about, yeah, what the program is, why we are focusing on climate change impacts on food and farming, and why that's such an important arena for climate action that really has ripple effects into other industries and arenas. We'll talk about the how of regenerative farming, how that's really poised to make a big shift in our climate mitigation and adaptation activities. We will highlight some of our host farms and some of the amazing practices that they're doing, and kind of throughout all of this intersperse stories of our courses and participants and alumni who have gone through and kind of share what they've gotten out of the experience. So yeah, that's where we're headed.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll just take a moment to introduce me and Ryan and our colleague Claire Hambrick. So I'm Lainey Signer. I'm the founder and co-director of Climate Farm School. I started this program now almost 3.5 years ago, and it grew out of a course offering at Terra.do Climate School when we were looking to offer more courses in climate action and climate education to adult professionals, and creating a course that's a hybrid of online learning and on-farm experiential learning has kind of always been my dream. I moved out to California, where I live now, 10 years ago after teaching middle school in Boston for 2 years. So I come from a family of teachers. My dad was a teacher, my mom was a teacher, I was a middle school teacher, and came out to California to study environmental science, thinking I wanted to teach middle school environmental science. But really found while I was out in graduate school in California, an amazing community of farmers on the West Coast that I was lucky to learn from over the summers as a farm intern and apprentice, and ran my own small vegetable production farm for a summer, and was really just so impressed and blown away by the knowledge that these farmers and land stewards had, especially when they were organized within their communities to support each other and feed other members of the community. And that was just not something that I grew up with. I grew up in the suburbs and went to college in the city and had not really experienced rural farm lifestyles and community until I moved out to the West Coast. So that really motivated me to try to make this knowledge that people living and working on the land really have with more people, especially people excited about climate action and environmental land stewardship. So I was thinking as I was finishing grad school of ways that I could bring more people onto farms that are farming regeneratively, taking care of soil health, feeding their communities. So the idea for Climate Farm School really emerged by talking to farmers who were also excited about welcoming more people onto their land, but weren't really ready to organize that themselves, because obviously farming is very hard work. So we developed a pilot in fall of 2021, and it's kind of grown into this program over the past 3 years with multiple host farms and multiple course offerings through the year, and now new team members as well. So I'll briefly turn it over to Claire to introduce herself. Claire has experienced several of our programs and is now working with us as our healthcare and programs coordinator. So Claire, over to you.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Lainey. Yeah, I have been working with Lainey and Ryan at Climate Farm School since I believe it was March of last year, March or May. And I've definitely had the pleasure of attending the courses, and what they've built is absolutely incredible. I'm currently working on some of their programming. I have a background, I was an undergrad at University of California, Berkeley. I studied conservation resource studies and have since gotten certifications in global agroecology, and spent quite a few months on regenerative farms, biodynamic farms in Hawaii and Nicaragua. And yeah, I just feel very lucky to be here. So off to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, so Claire is not technically an alumni, but has spent time attending all of our courses as part of her sort of pre-joining us full time. So Claire's also here to offer that perspective and answer any questions that you all might have. So my name's Ryan Peterson. I'm the co-director of Climate Farm School. I've been working on it for almost since the beginning. So if Lainey started 3.5 years ago, then it was 3 years ago for me. And I first joined, I was cooking at the time and had just finished a stint working on a educational regenerative farm in Southern California. And I came to help one of my good friends cook the graduation dinner for the pilot program. My background, as many people that attend Climate Farm School, is one of somebody who made a major change in their life. I used to work in finance in New York, and then I moved to California wanting to do something related to climate and environment, but wasn't sure what that was because I was so far outside of that world. But I landed in exactly the right place in Berkeley, California, where there's a lot of attention on food systems and on the regional farming community and the potential of regenerative agriculture to make an impact on ecosystem restoration and community, and pretty much all the things that I was concerned about just totally blew my mind. And for the first time in my life, I found something that I was super passionate about and just knew that I wanted to do professionally, at least. So my journey kind of led me through the food system from a policy perspective, a business perspective. I worked on some farms and then eventually became a cook. And wanted to tie all those things together because I think that you really can't understand food systems without seeing it from different perspectives. And then when I came to cook this dinner with my friend and I saw what Lainey had created, I was blown away. And I was like, this is exactly what I want to be a part of. The people that are in this program are having the experience in a week that I've been putting together for myself over the past 3 or 4 years of trying to see the food system up close from the perspective of those people that are actually working in it, and different perspectives of that. So it's the best job that I've ever had, getting to be with people on farms and see them transform and see their eyes open, and it transforms us every time too, to feel these other perspectives of people coming and getting reconnected to the land and to their food. So yeah, that's my background, and I'm excited for 2025. We've got a few new courses, which we'll talk about, and just another year of helping to forward this change in the food system. So I think with that, we'll start to just talk a little bit more about what the program is. Feel free to pop questions in the chat as we go, and then at the end, we'll just have some time for a live Q&A too. And if I don't see the questions in the chat, which is very likely, we'll talk about them at the end. So what is Climate Farm School? So it's a 4-week program in total. 3 weeks are online and they're self-paced. There are 3 online sessions that Lainey, myself, or another instructor will host. But for the most part, you have access to content which looks at the food system through different lenses: soil health, policy, ecosystem restoration, water management, and more. And you're able to do that and have lifetime access to it. But you can review a lot of that before you spend time on the farm, which helps you prepare you for the farm week. And then the farm week is the most fun part, where groups will come together we have now a short course and a longer course. So we have a 3-day course and a 6-day course. Come together and live on or near the farm in community. And each day you'll spend with farmers and food systems experts. And it'll be a mix of classroom time where we're talking about the systems and we're talking about change and we're reflecting on our roles in that change and how we can make change happen. And then we're also getting our hands in the dirt. You can see a great picture here of Lainey and one of our participants. It looks like potentially trellising something. And then we
Tomatoes.
also spend time in the kitchen together. So we have a chef with us, a farm to table chef with us each night. And you can see a picture of me and now a good friend and Climate Farm School alumni making kimchi there in one of the early programs. So each night participants spend time with the chef preparing a meal for the rest of the group.
Okay.
And who is Climate Farm School for? So it's for everybody. We've had an incredible diversity of people who come to the program from all different backgrounds. We have some listed here: entrepreneurs, investors, tech. We've had farmers, designers, consultants, policymakers, artists. And that really enriches the experience. We've also had doctors and expect more of them this year, and nurses. But that really enriches the experience. I mean, as with any education program, the people that you attend with really enhance it. And hearing their questions and their thoughts is extremely valuable. And so we do everything we can to cultivate that diversity. But we've also been blessed, and everybody in this room is probably reflective of that the people attracted to this program are usually just inherently very interesting and interested, passionate people, or people who are ready for a change in their life, which is exciting, and says something about who you are. So the groups are incredibly diverse, and they're for people who are at various different points in their life. It could be that you're ready to make a career change. It could be that you're ready to implement more food systems work, or climate work in the job that you're already in. Or it could be that you're just wanting to be more connected to a food system, your local food system, another food system, and change things in your personal life. Or it could be that you're ready for a week away from your normal life outside on a farm, building community as well. And this is just to give an example of that. We just listed the participants from our last cohort. So this was just two different farm groups, and this shows all the different jobs and sectors that people were in. Okay, and here's just a look at a day in the life on the farm during your on-farm week. So this varies a little bit. I feel as though Lainey might start a half hour earlier and I start a half hour later, typically. It varies a bit where we have to be flexible, with what the weather is and what's happening on the farm and the farmers, and accommodating them, and also trying to adjust based on whatever's happening to make sure that everybody gets the best sort of hands-on experience. So if there's an unplanned move of a bunch of sheep, then we might switch what we're doing and join in for that. Or if something needs to be protected from the rain, we might join in with that. And that gives you, I think, a really great firsthand experience of what it's like to be a farmer, where you have a plan and then you almost always change it. But typically in the morning, we have breakfast, and that's just sort of open breakfast. We source as much as possible organic and regenerative ingredients from the farms that we're working at. And then there's usually some optional activities some of the mornings. So you might go out milking or join some farmers that have offered to host the group for whatever they already happen to be doing. Sometimes participants will lead each other in yoga or meditation or go for a run. And then we typically get started around 8:30. And often in the morning, it will be farm work. And so there's a list of potential work that you might be doing here. It could be vegetables, weeding, harvesting, planting. It could be moving livestock. It could be some sort of a restoration project, removing invasives from a stream, for instance, or composting. It's pretty limitless, the amount of activities that can be happening on the farm. And then we'll take a long afternoon break, which is also typical of a lot of farmers, especially in hot climates at the hottest part of the day, for lunch together, and then whatever other activities you might want to do. Sometimes there are some optional activities in there as well. And then in the afternoons, typically we will, if we're not out visiting another farm, then we'll spend time in some sort of a barn classroom setting, either delivering some content, but most often having generative discussions together as a group. And oftentimes we'll bring in guest speakers. It could be soil scientists, it could be somebody in the healthcare system, or it could be an ecologist. And then, as I mentioned, each night, usually 2 of the participants will join the chef in making dinner, and we will often have guests that could be other people from the food system or farmers that you've hung out with that day. And then we do a debrief of our day. And then, yeah, so we assign 2 participants for dinner each night, although there's usually 1 or 2 folks who love to cook and are in the kitchen every night, and that is always welcome too. Okay, so I think there I will let you hear a different voice and turn it over to Lainey to talk a little bit more about the broader context for why Climate Farm School exists and how food systems can contribute to climate solutions.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So yeah, so getting back to sort of the like origination of Climate Farm School and why I was kind of allowed to generate this course on regenerative agriculture within this climate school that I was working for, Terra.do, which many of you may know. Around the time that Climate Farm School was created, there was just more and more attention, I think, deservedly being paid to food systems as an arena of both climate impact and climate solutions. So there was some new data that was showing that if we look at the food system as a whole, so not just production happening on the land and land impacts of agriculture, that the food system accounts for over 1/3 of total global greenhouse gas emissions. And then a little bit following that research, Dr. Jonathan Foley from Project Drawdown was coming up with more like tracking how we're doing globally on action on climate solutions. And a lot of things were moving forward in the clean energy realms, in transportation and buildings, kind of moving towards renewable energy and procurement of renewables and electric vehicles. But the arena that we were not making actual progress and even moving in the wrong direction was still food systems. So this is an area that very much deserves our attention and a more collaborative and unified effort across people working in the food systems that includes farmers, but is not exclusively farmers, to work together and develop integrated solutions for food systems that support climate resilience and so many better outcomes in the food systems might be possible if we're reducing emissions, adapting to the climate changes that are already happening all around the world, and simultaneously creating better livelihoods for farmers and farm workers and consumers of food, where we know that the Western diet is a huge contributor to diet-related diseases. So the more researchers were talking about climate impacts from food, climate opportunities to develop and enhance solutions in the food sector, there's just a ton of co-benefits depending on the way we enact and work together on solutions. So from my perspective as a middle school teacher turned farm intern, there's no better way to learn about solutions that might start off at the farm level but ripple across the food system as a whole than spending time on a farm. So I could talk until I'm like blue in the face about emissions in food, and a lot of people have, and there's a lot of research coming out, but someone that I learned from this fall just put it so perfectly that information doesn't change hearts and minds, direct experiences do. So having a food systems and climate action focused learning experience that is a direct experience of farming and food systems and cooking and eating together, and kind of embodying what a climate resilient, just, equitable, healthy food system could look like in the microcosm of a week, feels like a way to connect people with all different professional skill sets to the climate action arena in food systems. So that was kind of the genesis and where everything came from. And we spend some time during the courses talking about the problems of food systems contributing to climate change, but we spend more time, I would say, talking about and discussing where people are already doing things differently, something we call the models of transformation, and how we can support that work and build on it and replicate rather than scale sometimes, things that are actually working in context-specific ways in local and regional food systems. So that is, I would say, where the bulk of the material lies in the climate solution side, not necessarily the problem But there's tons and tons of resources that we're, generating and storing thanks to our online curriculum systems, that come from farmers, that come from participants. Like tons of people have contributed to the curriculum that's there that we strive to update every winter when we're not as actively leading courses. So depending on where your interests lie, there should be something that we can point you to. And it's a lot, we rely on a lot of participant direction in terms of like, what are we going to talk about in some of our barn classroom discussions, or what resources do you want that we should dive into together? So we have an active dialogue with our small group participants, which is nice in a setting of like 10 to 12 people. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you, Lainey. Maybe I'll just take, so I saw in the chat some of the places that you folks are interested in: Ireland, Sebastopol, and then somebody who's trying to get an overview of multiple courses to decide. But I do want to open it up before we dive in. Lainey and I will talk about some of the course locations, but are there any questions before we head to that part? You can feel free to just speak or put it in the chat.
Hi, this is Tanya from Florida.
Hi.
Okay.
Having a small farm, 4 acres, and not wanting to do any livestock or any animals. Is there any way, being that Berkeley has a different, soil and temperature and everything to here in Central Florida, would it be a course that I could use in Central Florida?
Sure.
That's
Do
a
you
great
want to take that,
question.
Lainey? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a good point, because a lot of people that are interested in coming to our courses don't necessarily live in we don't offer this all over the country yet. So don't live in the regions where the courses are happening. And I would say largely thanks to the soil health principles and what they can teach us as far as principles, and then you implement the principles with different practices in different places. There is a lot that you can gain from taking the course in different locations. And in Sebastopol in particular, it would be amazing if you were able to come to a course out here, because we often visit Singing Frogs Farm, which is sort of a legendary no-till 3 to 4 acre vegetable production farm, and doesn't have livestock directly integrated into their veggie farming, but
Right.
incorporates livestock animal integration, which is one of the soil health principles, in a lot of creative ways, where they consider native biodiversity, bees, pollinators, worms, birds, to be a part of their animal integration. And they use manure composted with other veggie products to add those animal nutrients kind of back into their veggie system. So there are a lot of ways you can make that work without managing livestock yourself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we talk about some of the farms? Okay. All right.
One question.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm Amy from California, and I was wondering, just if you could start out, what is the difference between are you using permaculture principles, or how does permaculture work into your work or your teaching?
I can take that, Lainey, and you feel free to add at any point. I mean, so the farms that we visit use a variety of different sustainable or ecologically based practices, and there's a ton of overlap between every type. So permaculture talks a lot about stories and building more permanent systems. And then there's things like holistic planned grazing and things like what people are calling regenerative agriculture or biodynamics. And all of these really great sort of frameworks for thinking about how you're going to farm share a lot of overlap. We don't pick one and necessarily focus on it, but we highlight whatever principles those farmers are implementing in their fields. And so you usually in each course see a variety of different things. But permaculture and the principles of permaculture are certainly at the heart of almost every different name that you might apply to ecological based farming.
Yeah, and I don't know where you are in California, Amy, but if you're up in kind of the Bay Area, the one of the places really close by to Green Valley Farm and Mill is the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center that has like kind of the best local embodiment of permaculture practices and education. They host a lot of permaculture design courses. So there are neighbors and folks that work there are involved in the course here. So there's, yeah, definitely a discussion of using those principles for certain production systems and like scales of production. And then, yeah, other principles that are happening nearby, like Ryan mentioned, are abundant.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about Piscinus Ranch, which is our first course coming up. And I'll also say on the frameworks for thinking about agriculture and just living, a really cool thing about Piscinus Ranch is the lead farmer there, Kelly Mulville, who's definitely become pretty famous in the regenerative ag world, especially as it comes to vineyard design. And you can find podcasts and articles written about him. But he's started doing a very cool thing with our group where he talks about holistic management and how it applies not just to the ecosystem or to the farming system, but how it applies to their whole enterprise and how it can spill out beyond that. And I've seen that a lot with permaculture principles too, that ecosystems work in the same way as social systems. And so thinking about these principles in a larger scale also helps us think about how we might shift the system more broadly. So Piscinus Ranch is a couple hours south of San Francisco in Piscinus, California. If anybody's familiar with Big Sur, it's sort of directly inland from the very top of Big Sur by about a couple hours, if you could drive directly. And they have about 7,000 acres of rangeland, which they are holistically planned grazing in order to maximize vegetation. And they have about 1,100 sheep, but often when we're there, they have maybe 2,200 because it's usually lambing season. And so there's a lot of baby lambs out in the field. And then a pretty incredible system that they've developed there, which you can see a bit on the left in its early stages, is a vineyard system, which allows sheep to graze in the vineyard year round. So many vineyards, especially in California, will use sheep in management of the grasses, forbs, and flowers underneath the vines, but they can only do that in the winter when the vines are not actively growing and there's no fruit on them, because the sheep will eat the new growth and the grapes. So that would obviously not work super well. But the problem with that is that the best time for grass growth, the best time for nutrient cycling, basically the best time for all these symbiotic interactions between the vines and the sheep would happen during the growing season, which is more going to be spring and summer. And so what they've done there is they've raised the vines a couple feet higher and they grow the vines overhead, which allow the sheep to be brought in whenever they're most needed. And it also makes the environment much cooler, which is great for the farm workers, especially in a warming climate. So it's a really cool system that is now being replicated around the world. And that's why Kelly has become pretty famous, because people in New Zealand and Australia and somewhat in the US as well are following their lead and seeing how this sort of ongoing but successful so far experiment plays out. And then, one story that we didn't put a specific section for alumni highlights here, but one story that I like to share about Piscinus is that's just a great example of the kinds of things that can happen in our courses. Is on this picture on the right here, I cut her off a little bit, but in the left, there's a woman named Asha Agrawal who until very recently was the head of corporate development and investment for Patagonia, working on their food systems division, Patagonia Provisions. And she came to our course because she invested in regenerative supply chains. That was part of her mandate from Patagonia, to help build a regenerative food system by investing in the supply chains that were needed in order to make it happen. But she hadn't spent that much time on farms or with farmers in a really intimate way, besides maybe a quick farm visit here and there. And so she came and she shared with us afterwards how much it changed her investment decisions. By spending that time on the farm and talking to farmers, she was able to realize what actually would be valuable for farmers and what was not. And so there were a few investments that they were looking at that they decided to pull out of. And then there were a few things they had been on the fence on, which I just stumbled into. One of them being a system called No Fence, which allows you to move grazing animals without actually moving the physical fences. You can do it by satellite. She realized while she was there just how much time ranchers spend moving animals in a holistic system, which does not happen in conventional systems. So anyway, it's just a great example of the kinds of transformation that really only happen when you have this direct experience with farmers. So that's a bit about Piscinas Ranch. And Piscinas Ranch this year, we're really excited, is going to be our first short course. So it's going to be 3 days. Lainey and I are big advocates for a full week course and spending as much time on the land as possible, but also recognize that that isn't always possible for everybody, or might seem like a big jump. And so this is our first time doing a 3-day course. And I think it's the perfect place to do it. Instead of visiting other farms, we'll spend all 3 days at Piscinas, which still allows you to see a perennial cropping system and a grazing system and really dive into soil health. And so that will be happening in April, and we're pretty psyched about that. And hopefully we can get some people that wouldn't otherwise be able to make it. Any questions about Piscinas Ranch before I move on? No.
One more question, not about the ranch, but
Yeah.
if you do the 3-day course, would you be leaving behind a lot of information or experience if compared to the 7-day on farm?
Well, you would still get access to the same online content, so the same sort of food systems overview, and the core pieces of soil health and regenerative systems you would absolutely still be immersed in. The major trade-off is seeing a variety of different systems on different farms, which can be super informative to see that comparative thing, not only in farming systems, but also in organizational structures. So I would say that we're designing it so that you still get a lot out of it. And so that maybe in the future, you might want to take the longer course and you would still get a lot out of that. So I think it can stand on its own, but there's certainly more that you can learn. And there's always, even after you do one of our courses, going to see more farms and talking to more farmers is always going to be additive. Yeah, because comparing other systems, and this is kind of what Lainey was saying in her answer to your question earlier, is by seeing different systems and how things work in different environments, it actually really highlights the principles by seeing different practices.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Maybe, Lainey, do you want to talk about Green Valley just to break up our voices a little bit, and then I'll go back to Ballymaloe?
Sure, that sounds great. Green Valley Farm and Mill is where I live, where I am currently. So always a pleasure to talk about it as our first host farm site, where we launched our pilot in September 2021. So Green Valley is a pretty unique 172-acre farm and land project. It's a cooperative ownership model with 6 co-owners who came together to purchase the land, and in doing that kind of cooperatively, we're looking to enable diversified land management practices and farm businesses to exist that wouldn't all need to be run by one person. So there's both an ownership team, and then there's a variety of land leasing agreements that allow for a raw milk herd share with grazing Jersey cows to be operating on the land. There's an on-farm creamery where the milk from the cows is transformed into yogurt, cheese, and also distributed as raw milk through the herd share. There's half of the land is forested, so there's forestry management and a on-site mill that's milling some of the forest products from here and other nearby forested lands into like small diameter forest products that would be, you know, considered part of thinning activities for fire mitigation, usually can't be used in normal mills. So the milling operation is a little bit smaller, and it transforms these products into usable lumber for furniture making. So yeah, very cool forestry things happening on the other side of the street. There's also a mushroom farm on the like very adjacent, like basically like the property line. There's vegetable production. There's a 1 acre dry farmed vineyard of Nebbiolo grapes. Am I missing anything? There's an herb garden where it's a kind of community herb garden that people buy membership shares in and then have access to growing whatever herbs they're interested in addition to the ones that are already here for medicine making or other uses of herbs. So yeah, there's a lot of people that come through the farm. There's a kids nature program that operates here throughout the year. And yeah, it's just really exciting to see all of the people and plants and animals that are kind of a part of this diversified farm ecosystem. So we spend time both here at Green Valley, where there's a farmhouse and a barn and kind of a little event space built into the farm, and then visit nearby farming operations during our week-long courses here, including Singing Frogs Farm, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. So yeah, that's here.
Anybody have questions about Green Valley before I move on?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I was having trouble finding the mute button. Thank you both so much thus far for all the info. For the Green Valley one in particular, would there be sort of an opportunity or the space to kind of learn from the farm or the farmers what their experience, successes, and challenges have been like in working with like CPG brands in getting products to market and those value chains and so on? I asked that specifically to sort of maybe help me differentiate between the sorts of things I might learn particular to my interests, in one from California, US based within CPG connections versus maybe one like in Ireland or otherwise.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, a lot of the farms that we work with, including Green Valley, are not distributing their farm products to CPG companies in those supply chains. It tends to be more direct to consumer. But I'm trying to think, I mean, coming in with those questions and letting us know as like a course team, either in the application or ahead of time, always helps, because there are certainly local guest speakers and local farmers that are not the farmers here at Green Valley that are maybe better people to talk to about the CPG supply chains. So I'm thinking of like the Feed Cooperative in Sebastopol is trying to do more, at least institutional procurement for schools and hospitals. And then there's probably a farm that's name's escaping me that worked, actually it was a farmer turned like food entrepreneur who launched Biotic Bubbly, who's sourcing vegetables from local farms to ferment into the kvass that they now sell. So there's definitely local examples. It's not happening here with the products of Green Valley Farm, but I would say that's something to just kind of mention or flag in an application, and we can certainly be in touch with you about that and think about who we invite to join afternoon discussions, dinners, and things like that.
Okay, cool.
I'll just add to that, Brian, to a couple other thoughts. One is that we often do online guest talks specifically for our alumni community. And those are the kind of things that we try to highlight. I mean, we bring in different perspectives. So it could be policy, people that are working in business, but when your time on the farm, you're learning so much about the principles and the struggles of farmers and how they, you can start to conceptualize what would make it easy for them or hard for them to sell into a supply chain. And then in those other guest talks, we can bring in people that are maybe working further up in the supply chain if they haven't come to a course. But the other thing that I would mention is three farms that we have and we'll talk about. Piscinas Ranch, and I forgot to mention this, but this is a key part. Piscinas Ranch is a 4-part enterprise that has education, has farming, has their sort of event hosting, and then they also have an investment and philanthropy arm. And we usually will talk about that during the course. And And they're basically using all these different angles to try to promote and advance regenerative agriculture. And Sally Calhoun, who owns the ranch, is basically giving away all of her money to regenerative agriculture. Their investment arm does invest in CPG companies like Lotus Foods, you may have seen in your kind of organic grocery stores. So that's kind of an interesting piece of that course. And then both at Ballymaloe in Ireland and Hawthorne Valley Farm in New York, those are farms that do have some of their own CPG brands. So Hawthorne Valley Farm distributes widely, and they launched and they actually sold, but are still somewhat connected to a fermented foods brand. And then Ballymaloe has products that are sold throughout the country as well. So anyway, just a little bit more color.
Yeah, and I would say it is like a mindset shift to source from regenerative farms as a CPG company. So I think it's been really interesting to see at least 3 of our alumni now have started CPG companies, selling chickpea pancake mix and bone broth and pasta, and sourcing from farms that are following as regenerative as possible practices. Might mean something slightly different for your product line if you're trying to support their diversity of production system, like what they're producing. So yeah, it's something that's a really interesting area to get into. And I appreciate the question, Brian.
Yeah, it's awesome insight. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to talk a bit about Ballymaloe, which I'm extremely excited about. This is a new course for us, and some of you may have heard of the Ballymaloe Cookery School, which has been around for about 40 years now. And this course is going to be an opportunity to dive into the other side of their operation. So Ballymaloe has been a farm longer than it was a cooking school, but in I believe the 1970s, when things were starting to shift in Ireland and the power was growing among supermarkets and grocery stores, it was getting much harder for farms, especially if you wanted to grow organically or on a small or medium scale, to survive. And so the cookery school actually grew out of a desire to support the farm, and then became extremely famous, and has trained thousands, tens of thousands, I would assume, of chefs around the world that are using these seasonal organic ingredients in their cooking and basing their menus off that. And so they're opening up their farm more and more to share what they've learned about farming, and how it contributes to systems change. And we actually, so Darina Allen, who is the founder of the Cookery School and a famous cookbook author and chef in Ireland and worldwide, she came to one of our courses in Italy, I guess a year and a half ago now, and loved the course. We developed a relationship and decided that we wanted to collaborate on creating a course at Ballymaloe. So this course is also in the spring, and you'll be living on site near the cookery school right next to the farm. And it's all of our courses are hands-on, but there will be I would say even more emphasis in this and some practical sessions, just because of the nature of how the farm is designed. So you can see there's going to be some beekeeping, there'll be gardening, and this is a really special opportunity. There'll be a lot of time with Darina, who is super knowledgeable and a whirlwind of a person to be around. She's involved in so many things. So she'll be spending time on some practical lessons with us, cooking lessons, and we'll also have dinner in her home, which is right in the middle of the farm. We'll visit an oyster farm as well. And, Lainey mentioned earlier how a big focus of ours is to understand models of transformation or ways that people are doing things differently. And I would say that Ballymaloe and how it's structured is a perfect example of a model of transformation. They're trying to use educating cooks and chefs to advance food systems change. And then the farm that they've built, and the economy that they've built in County Cork, Shenagary is specifically the town, really demonstrates how a food system can look if you think about it a little bit more differently and locally. So we're excited for that course, and Gary Podesto will be cooking that week, who's on our team and an amazing chef, and he'll be collaborating with the Ballymaloe team to bring some kind of amazing food and Irish cuisine. So any questions about Ballymaloe?
This is Amy again. I actually do have a question. Is there a way
Oh, you cut out there, Amy.
you, as you're presenting?
Sorry, can you repeat that? You cut out for a moment.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm up in the mountains, so I have a little low connection. I was wondering about the dates for these. Is there a way you
Oh,
can mention
sure.
them?
Yeah, we have them at the end here. So let me just pull it up real quick. Yeah, here, these are the on-farm dates, and then if you go into our website, you can see the online dates, but the on-farm dates are going to be the most important because the online dates are pretty, like, it's flexible. I'm just going to mute somebody here. It's flexible how you want to approach that coursework. So being able to make the on-farm dates is the critical part. Okay, we've got a little time left, so we can talk about a few more courses here. And I'll turn it back over to Lainey to talk about Spinocchia, another one of our Europe courses.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, maybe we can talk about Spinocchia and then just like head over to the questions and like leave the dates up for a minute, since we only have about 10 more minutes. But yeah, if people have specific questions about Hudson Valley, we can obviously go there too. So Spinocchia has been a really special farm relationship that we've had since almost the very beginning of Climate Farm School. It's an amazing site of sustainable agriculture education in Tuscany. And there's quite a close relationship between Spinocchia and the nonprofit Friends of Spinocchia, which is run out of Maine in the US, because the couple that created Spinocchia into what it is now, obviously it's been around for a long time. The castle is from the 12th century, but the couple that really brought it into sustainable ag education was an Italian and American marriage. So it's pretty well known for people that are interested in pursuing farm internships, especially in Europe. So they offer a 3-month internship program that they run 3 times a year and have interns from all over the world gathered at Spinocchia working on the land there. It's like all of our sites, very diversified. It's about a 1,200 acre piece of land right adjacent to a nature preserve. So the kind of uninterrupted agriculture plus ecology is vast around where the castle is situated. And there's things happening in the forest. There's forested land. There's a vineyard production system and winemaking that happens on the farm. There's heritage breed pigs, the Cinta Senese, that are raised at Spinocchia, and a butchery program that happens there to process the meat, and it's served through the castle and the agritourism operation. Much of what is the food that is prepared and served there comes from the land. There's also vegetable production that is managed by Iago, who's the farmer there that we'll spend some time with. And Nicolo is the farm education coordinator who also gets more involved, I would say, in the vineyard and olive production and the Cinta Senese pigs. He leads a lot of sessions on those topics happening at Spinocchia. And we visit some really amazing nearby farms during that week. Tenuta de Paganico, where you see the picture of the cow on the left, is one of the most amazing heritage breed cattle production systems I've ever seen, because the cows have free access to field and forest and spend time in both ecosystems for different reasons and parts of their life cycle. It's pretty amazing to see and really inspiring, kind of game changing, for opening up our minds to different ways of growing food while tending to the native ecosystem and even doing ecosystem restoration while producing food, which is mostly thought of as like not possible when it comes to food systems and food production discussions. So yeah, so it's kind of like there's been a lot of either or, like we have to either conserve nature and not produce food on it, or produce food with as minimal impact as possible, but like concentrate all of that. And I think this really kind of changes the dichotomy there in terms of like where can we do both. And that's one of the most synergistic things and hopeful things about regenerative agriculture and food systems. We also visit Tenuta San Carlo, where there's amazing organic rice production happening, led by Ariane on about 1,100 hectares. So she converted her family's land from conventional to organic production, has incorporated crop rotation and really innovative water management practices to grow rice differently from what has been the norm. So she's a huge resource and amazing person to learn from. She also worked for the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition in DC before moving to Italy to take over her family's land. So she has both policy experience and farming experience, and it's a pretty amazing combination. So Ryan and I will both be there in May and hope to see some of you there.
Sweet. Thank you, Lainey. Okay, I'll leave these course dates up and then open it up for any questions.
Well, I can start with the first one that came in from the chat. Once you have completed the Climate Farm School course, what types of careers have students adopted? That's a great question. It's probably a diverse range of answers as there are students and participants. Some people definitely come through the program who are already working in careers in climate or food systems, working for companies or working for, we've had a few folks from Rocky Mountain Institute, and basically just kind of stay in those careers with a sort of deepened focus and appreciation for how they can be in service of farmers and local food systems through their work. We've definitely also had people interested in procuring from farms, but not sure how to do that, kind of take steps to figure it out by coming. But if you're transitioning careers, or we've had some folks in undergrad or graduate schools who are coming to our course and then looking to find jobs. We've seen people, yeah, like I mentioned, start their own companies and also find work at other existing companies and organizations. Like the Soil Health Alliance, I think, is where one of our alumni is now working. Where else have people recently gone? Yeah, I mean, the interest is really broad in terms of where this takes people. Yeah, I'm trying to think where there's something that's on the tip of my tongue. Anyways, I don't know, Ryan, do you have any other examples of where people have gone since Climate Farm School? I'm like,
yeah, I mean, definitely. And sorry, I was reading ahead. So if I repeat something, I was reading the other questions. If I repeat something, I apologize. But I mean, yes, there's people that have gone on to do soil advocacy work, to work for nonprofits. There's people who have, I would say often made changes in their investment careers. So I mentioned Asha, and we've had another person from a different investment firm who they've sort of made shifts in what they were already doing to be more focused on food and agriculture, and also shift the focus of their teams. And we've had a few people go on to actually start farms. That's definitely not what we're designing the course for, is to train farmers, but it is a great jumping off point if that is something that you might be interested in, acquiring land or working on land. And so we've had a few people go into farmer training programs and start their own farms. And we've had, as Lainey mentioned, we've had 3 people start CPG brands. We've also had 2 others who have started technology focused solutions for farmers and for regenerative agriculture. So it's really been, yeah, all over the map. I would say there's a real dearth of like hands-on agricultural food systems education. And so anybody that's trying to make a shift, the path isn't always like super straightforward, but having this hands-on experience and talking to farmers really kind of differentiates you and also allows you to think more pragmatically about what's needed out there. I wish that there were more obvious career pathways. Once that happens, there might be less of a need for Climate Farm School, but there's definitely a lot of people that have used the course to jump off and do creative things.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. I've been jumping in and trying to answer some of the questions in the chat, but let me see if there's anyone that require longer explanation. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, yeah, just for the deadlines question. So there's the registration deadlines, which Lainey said, which is about a month before the on-farm week starts. We don't have anything officially posted because we accept applications on a rolling basis, but there's about 10 to 12 spots per course. It varies a little bit based on facility. So obviously there's a deadline, but it's also once the course fills up, then we would point you to future courses. I also see more courses might be added. Oh, and Laney's got it. So yeah, those are the most likely courses to be added. It's not guaranteed that they will be added. The ones up here are the ones that we're sure of, but California, New York, and Italy in the fall would be likely spots.
Mhm. Yeah, let's see. And there was one that I was maybe going to add more color to. Oh, one thing that we didn't say already is that one of the things in running courses again for diverse groups of participants, in addition to that, we're also interested in exploring more relationships with aligned organizations or companies that might want to send a group of people to a Climate Farm School site. I think we've done that kind of ad hoc over the past 2 years for tech companies and actually a school district student nutrition services team last summer, and are very interested in doing that. So we're trying to also keep a little bit of openness on the calendar if those partnerships emerge. And so if you know of people, organizations, companies that would want to send a team for professional development or professional learning to a farm, we're very happy to follow up with people via email and try to work that out, because there is capacity and availability for more programming at our host farm sites. We're just, again, kind of trying to balance opportunities and time and all those things. So please follow up with us. And especially if the group or organization is healthcare related at all, where Claire is helping us a lot with developing more curriculum, guest talks, and on-farm experiences geared towards healthcare professionals to receive continuing medical education. So that's something we're getting set up to do. We're going to test it out in the spring in California. And so yeah, if you know of any doctors, nurses, nutritionists, dietitians who could really benefit from this, we also appreciate connecting with them, as that's what we're actively working on.
I also just want to underscore an answer that you gave in the chat, Lainey, about the alumni community. I would say that it's hard to pick my favorite thing about Climate Farm School, but that is potentially it. The alumni community is incredible, and we're doing more and more as we grow to organize it and create more events and opportunities for alumni to connect. But the best thing so far is how self-motivated people have been to organize. And so we have over 200 alumni now around the world, and that is just an incredible resource for finding friends, finding like-minded community, awesome dinner parties, and also people starting businesses and helping each other navigate their way through the food system and find jobs. So as much as we try to support all of those things, the alumni community is pretty incredible and generative in that way.
Yeah, it's probably, it's hard to pick a favorite, but it is really up there, how much people support and help each other. And I'm excited to offer more alumni courses that are often led by what alumni want to learn more about. So it's a really active, and I would say, what's the word, like self generative or self-directed offerings of learnings, kind of from the point of taking an initial course to build on that in the future. And I also think the 3-day course will hopefully provide that entry point and then access into the alumni community, and then help guide us into what do people really want, what else can we set up as far as not always 6-day offerings, but additional 3-day on-farm experiences that allow you to keep going with this type of learning and experience in your work and career paths. Because I think a lot of alumni, like, we did this once and now what do? We want to do more of this kind of thing. So we're building this programming very much together with our alumni. Yeah, well, and I'm happy to stay on for a couple more minutes if people have additional questions they want to ask to me or Ryan or Claire. As folks also probably need to drop off, thank you all for staying and for your attention. And it's been really lovely to start the day over here on the West Coast with you all.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Keeler and
Well.
Nikita, any questions?
No questions. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks
coming.
for being here. Yeah,
Have a great day, guys.
You too.
you too.
All right, I'm gonna close it out.
Awesome. Bye, you guys.
Okay, bye.
Take care.